It was late evening on Christmas Eve, and I was driving home after finishing my last exam of the semester. The air was cold, biting at my cheeks as I drove along the desolate stretch of highway leading to my parents' house. My car's heater sputtered, unable to fend off the chill creeping into the cabin. The night was eerily quiet, the snow-draped trees on either side of the road illuminated by my headlights. My phone buzzed with a notification from my mom. "Drive safe, honey. We're waiting for you with hot cocoa." I smiled, comforted by the thought of home. But my smile faded when I noticed a figure in the rearview mirror. A man, standing by the roadside, waving his arms frantically. I hesitated, my foot hovering over the brake. It was Christmas Eve. I couldn't just leave someone stranded. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the window slightly. "Need a lift?" I asked. The man's face was pale, his lips cracked from the cold. He nodded, shivering. "Thank you. My car broke down a mile back," he said, climbing into the passenger seat. He wore a thick coat and gloves, but his demeanor was unsettling. Something about his eyes, cold, calculating, made my stomach churn. We drove in silence for a while. I asked him where he was headed, but he dodged the question, mumbling something about meeting family. I noticed his hands fidgeting, tapping against his thighs. My unease grew when I caught sight of a glint of metal peeking from his coat pocket. A knife. I've never been more aware of my surroundings. My pulse quickened as I calculated my options. The road stretched endlessly ahead, no turnoffs, no signs of life. "You're taking this road all the way?" he suddenly asked, his tone sharp. Yeah. It's the quickest way to my parents' place," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mind if we stop? I've been walking for hours. Could use a break." "Actually, My words caught in my throat as he pulled the knife from his pocket, holding it casually but with purpose. "Pull over." I obeyed, my hands trembling on the wheel. The car rolled to a stop, and he gestured for me to get out. "Keys," he demanded. I handed them over, my heart pounding. He motioned for me to walk into the woods. "What are you going to do?" I stammered. He didn't answer. I stumbled into the forest, the snow crunching underfoot. The cold seeped into my bones. My only chance was to run. I waited until he was distracted, then bolted deeper into the trees. I heard his shouts behind me, then the crunch of snow as he gave chase. My lungs burned, but adrenaline kept me going. Suddenly, headlights illuminated the trees ahead. Car. I ran toward it, screaming for help. The driver, a state trooper, stepped out, gun drawn. The man pursuing me froze, knife in hand. "Drop it!" the officer barked. The man hesitated, then lunged. A gunshot echoed, and he fell to the ground, the snow staining red. I collapsed, sobbing as the officer called for backup. Christmas morning arrived with flashing lights and sirens, but I was alive. It was early evening on Christmas Eve, and the house smelled of roasting turkey and cinnamon. The kids were asleep upstairs, their stockings hung by the fireplace, the tree glowing softly in the corner. I had just finished wrapping the last of the presents, the colorful paper and ribbons strewn across the living room floor. My husband, Tom, was out picking up a last-minute gift, leaving me alone in the house. The faint strains of Silent Night drifted through the window from a group of carolers down the street. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, humming along with the carolers, when I heard a knock at the door. It was a crisp, deliberate knock, not the kind you'd expect from neighbors or friends. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and peered through the peephole to see a man in a Santa hat, holding a plate of cookies. His grin was too wide, his eyes too intense, and my stomach tightened with unease. "Merry Christmas," he chirped. "I'm spreading holiday cheer." "Thank you, but we're fine," I said, starting to close the door. His hand shot out, stopping it. "Oh, come on. Just one cookie," he insisted, leaning closer. The sharp tang of peppermint wafted from the cookies, mingling oddly with the scent of his cologne. My heart raced as I tried to push the door closed. "Leave!" I shouted, gripping the doorknob tightly. His grin faded, replaced by a look of irritation. "Let's not ruin Christmas," he said, forcing the door open. I stumbled back, grabbing the nearest weapon, the knife I'd been using in the kitchen. He lunged at me, and I slashed blindly, cutting his arm. He screamed, grabbing a candlestick from the side table and swinging it at me. I ducked, my heart pounding as the weight of the moment hit me. This wasn't a simple intruder. This was something far more sinister. I ran for the stairs, my feet slipping on the polished wood. I needed to get to the kids. Every instinct screamed to protect them. I locked us in their room, dialing 911 with shaking hands. The operator's calm voice was a lifeline as I tried to explain what was happening. "He's in the house," I whispered, holding the phone tightly. The pounding on the door was relentless, shaking the wood. I pressed my back against it, trying to barricade us in. The kids clung to me, their wide eyes filled with fear. "Help is on the way," the operator assured me, but time seemed to stretch endlessly. The pounding stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. I strained to hear, my breath shallow. Then came the sound of breaking glass. My heart sank. He was trying to climb in through the window. I grabbed a heavy lamp, ready to fight if he got through. The kids hid under the bed, their small frames trembling. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Relief flooded me as flashing lights illuminated the room. The man froze half in the window as the police arrived. "Drop it!" an officer shouted. The man hesitated, then let himself fall back into the snow. They dragged him away, his Santa hat askew. The plate of cookies shattered on the ground. I sank to the floor, holding the kids tightly as tears streamed down my face. But the nightmare didn't end there. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Small things would go missing from the porch, a wreath, a pair of boots. One day, I found a note tucked into the mailbox. "Merry Christmas. See you next year." It was supposed to be a cozy Christmas Eve, but as I drove through the snow-draped streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The faint glow of festive lights from houses along the road didn't bring comfort. Instead, they seemed eerie, casting long shadows against the falling snow. My destination was a cabin tucked away on the outskirts of town, where my friends had planned a small holiday get-together. We were a tight-knit group, always meeting during the holidays to exchange gifts and share stories. This year, though, the mood felt heavier, maybe because of the recent news. A series of unsolved disappearances had plagued our town over the past month. 5 people had vanished without a trace, the only clue being small, bloody handprints left near their last known locations. I arrived at the cabin just as dusk settled in. The others were already there: Liam, Sarah, Mia, and Josh. The cabin was warm, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. A crackling fire lit the room, and the smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. We laughed, sipped hot cocoa, and exchanged gifts, trying to ignore the unease we all felt but refused to acknowledge. Around 8 p.m., the power flickered and went out. "It's probably the storm," Liam said, peering out the window. "I'll check the breaker." He grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. Minutes passed, then 10. Sarah started to worry. "Should we go check on him?" she asked. Josh shook his head. "Give him a bit. He's probably just struggling to find the panel in the dark." But Liam didn't come back. The unease in the room grew palpable. "Let's all go together," I suggested, grabbing a lantern. We stepped outside into the icy wind and called for Liam. No answer. The snow muffled our voices, swallowing them into the night. As we rounded the corner of the cabin, we found his flashlight lying in the snow, still on, but no sign of him. Footprints led away from the cabin into the woods. "Maybe he's trying to find help?" Mia suggested, though her voice wavered. It didn't make sense. Why would Liam wander off without telling us? We followed the footprints, the only sound our boots crunching in the snow. The trail led deeper into the forest, where the trees grew dense, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky. Suddenly, the prince stopped. There was no sign of Liam, just an empty clearing surrounded by silence. Panic set in. We hurried back to the cabin, locking the door behind us. "We need to call the police," Sarah said. But when we picked up the landline, there was no dial tone. Our cell phones had no signal either. Hours crawled by, each second feeling like an eternity. Every creak of the cabin made us jump. Then, around midnight, we heard it. A soft knock at the door. We froze. Who could it be? Mia whispered. "Liam." I stepped closer, heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called out. No response, just another knock, louder this time. Against my better judgment, I opened the door a crack. Snow blew in, but there was no one there. Just a small, bloody handprint on the doorframe. Panic turned to dread. "What the hell is going on?" Josh shouted. We barricaded the door and windows, fear settling in like a heavy fog. Around 2 a.m., we heard movement on the roof, slow, deliberate footsteps. "It's not an animal," Sarah whispered, clutching a fire poker. We huddled together in the living room, every shadow seeming to shift and move. Then came the sound of glass shattering. Someone or something was inside. We bolted for the back door, but the snow was so deep it slowed us down. As we stumbled through the woods, I heard Mia scream. I turned, but she was gone, her scream echoing into silence. The rest of us ran blindly, desperate to escape. Eventually, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned barn. We hid inside, trying to catch our breath. "We can't just stay here," Josh said. "We have to keep moving." But before we could decide, the barn door creaked open. A man stepped inside, his face obscured by a hood. He held a large hunting knife, its blade glinting in the moonlight. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah sobbed, but he didn't answer. He moved closer, his boots crunching on the hay-strewn floor. Josh lunged at him, trying to wrestle the knife away, but the man was too strong. I grabbed a wooden plank and swung it with all my might, hitting him across the head. He staggered but didn't go down. Instead, he turned to me, his eyes cold and empty. I don't know how, but we managed to escape, running until we reached the main road. A passing car stopped, and the driver called the police. When they arrived, they found the man in the barn, unconscious. He was identified as a drifter who had been living in the area for months, evading suspicion while targeting his victims. Liam and Mia's bodies were recovered from a shallow grave near the cabin, along with the remains of the other missing people. The drifter was arrested, but the horror of that night will haunt me forever. Christmas will never feel cozy again. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the content. As a college student, I work hard to create these videos, and I edit everything on my mobile phone. I'm hoping to upgrade to a laptop to improve the quality of my videos, but I don't want to ask for money directly. This Christmas, if you enjoy what I do, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could consider subscribing to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Your support helps me so much as I continue working toward my goals. Wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. May this festive season bring you joy and warmth. Thanks again for your support, and stay tuned for more.